Hello, everyone, and welcome to Writers Drinking Coffee. This is a podcast where writers sit around drinking tasty beverages to talk about writing, publishing, and the whole creative process. There will be rants and raves and opinions that may not agree but are lovingly delivered. We do not censor ourselves, so consider us PG-13. I am your host today, Jeannie Warner. This is episode 228, Stories from HR. I would like you all to meet somebody I went to high school with 40 years ago, Dari D'Souza. Dari and some other companions of hers wrote an ebook on HR management, and I really enjoyed the fast read. And it made me think of more work stories from my own life. So welcome, Dari. Let's talk about this.
Thank you so much. It's funny, 1,000 years ago.
Right?
I love it.
Well, there's before times. I can barely remember what happened before COVID. So, yeah.
Thank you for having me today.
Oh, it's so my delight. Your book is called HR After Dark, Leadership Lessons, and I was very heartened to see that it says Volume 1.
Yes. So this was a lot of fun. So myself and a couple of colleagues, so there's 5 of us authors, all of us, HR professionals by career. And, something we always say, like when you have some just crazy, unusual employment situation that you've dealt with, you say, oh my God, this is going in my book. This is going in my book. And well, this is that book, the one that we always say we're going to do and never do. We actually did. So that was a lot of fun to come together and collaborate with just some of the workplace stories that have happened to us over the years.
Well, I wanted to talk about your book because it really does illustrate 2 fundamental principles of why we write. And the first one is that all writing is important, and human beings are storytellers. We have told each other stories, real and fiction, like around the fire for thousands of years.
Yeah.
I mean, in the no shit, there I was, we've created reasons from everything from natural events to snark about why my neighbor doesn't let their cats in the house, whatever it happened to be. Stories are how we understand and relate to each other and relate to the world we live in.
Yeah, but I think too, all of us, the 5 of us authors, we're a little bit, older in our careers, and as we teach and train and try to grow, new HR leaders, we do it with stories. Like, okay, so this one time this thing happened to me. So now that you've learned it, you can avoid that thing, and you can avoid that lesson that I had to learn the hard way. And that's kind of a little bit how this evolved.
You just neatly outlined the second principle, which is that what you have to say and write needs to be heard by someone else. You wrote a book helping HR people, and frankly, leadership that isn't necessarily HR, that gives them stories from issues to employees behaving badly to just leadership advice and steps to take and improve. And that's really cool.
I think that most of these stories could be any people leader. You're right. They do. You don't have to be an HR person. Obviously, we are HR and we talk to HR, right? So we're, training them, but this could be any people leader. You don't have to be human resources. You don't have to be a general manager or an ED. It's just anybody who manages people. Things are going to happen in the workplace. Even great workplaces, stuff can happen. So in these stories, these are some very typical things. Like there's no story that we have that's so unusual. It's a 1 in a million, right? Most of these stories, anyone who reads them who's been in the workplace for a while is like, oh yeah, I had this thing happen like that to me. So most of these stories are very relatable with people's experiences.
They are. I mean, I've been in marketing for the security space recently, and I used to say there's no emergencies in marketing. And about 10 minutes after I said that, we were at RSA and somebody dropped in our booth. I'm like,
oh God.
I eat my words. There are absolutely emergencies in everything.
Emergencies in marketing.
Exactly. And that's the succinct and descriptive telling of your stories is what I liked. And I don't know if you guys, did you work editing each other's stories, or were there just everybody put it in? How did you come together? Because it has a similar tone all the way through it and a similar style.
So this process started, besides, our internal voice, like I need to write a book about this one day, we really started back in 2024. A group of us who were previously corporately employed and had all gone out on our own to be HR consultants. We were in a consultant group. It was just a consultant collaborative. And each month we'd meet and have different topics and really just supporting each other so we could all be better, independent business people, just helping each other grow. And so that's where we started having a conversation of like, I'd really like to write a book. And when you're really faced with the mountain of writing a book, like, oh my gosh, I don't have it in me. I just don't think I have it in me to write a book. And I said, well, you know what I could do? Write a chapter. And then the next person, like, well, write one chapter as well. And next thing you know, we had this group of the five of us, like, we could all write one chapter. I said, what if we just start there? And let's just write a chapter. And what's been very interesting about this is none of us has ever done anything like writing a book. Formatting, don't know. Copyright, not sure what to do with that. Like none of us had done any of it. So for all of us, it was one, the stories we tell, and we'll use them as examples in training or other things. So all of us had no experience doing this. This was just like, okay, what are we doing? How do we do a copyright? None of us knew. So it was truly all of us piecing together different parts, going and doing research, coming back to the group as a whole and going, okay, this is what I found out. And each person taking a part of it while we were just focused on the one chapter, one story. Like, all right. So then as time, so we really started in earnest October of 24. And after a couple months, people were like, kind of again, life happens, business happens, and people got distracted. It's like, oh, wait, we got to come back together. And then we're like, all right, so now what we need to do is set us some goals and due dates and hold ourselves accountable because we did self-edit. We didn't hire an editor. We really wanted this to feel organic. And just from a financial perspective, we wanted to write a book, but we also didn't want to spend $10,000 to write the book. So we self-edited. So the first one is you get your chapter done. And then you immediately partnered with other people and they would edit and give notes. And then you'd rewrite and then a different person. So with five of us, at some point, all of us have read and edited each other's chapters multiple times. And then we had a couple people who were really strong editors. So they went through everyone's and final edits and sentence structure, punctuation, grammar. This sounds wonky. Let's focus on that. So as that kind of evolved, when you said it kind of has that same the same kind of feel to the chapters, we said, okay, one, story, chapter title, make it interesting. It's got to, like, I need to read that title and go, oh, I need to read this story. What is this about? Two, compelling story. So don't write it like it's a textbook. Write it. We wanted the person, here was my goal. I wanted the reader to be right next to you as that leader in the thing that was happening. And I wanted them to cringe just like we were cringing at the time. So we really wanted them to feel the story. And then for us, you can have story time. Story time is always interesting, but we really needed to pull that through to what did we learn from it? Like we did some things, there were some things on here where we made some mistakes, right? So leadership made mistakes or we personally made mistakes. How could we do better? And then the very end of each chapter is action steps. So if you, the reader, are a people leader, if you go through those action steps, it's like a little self-audit. And so how could you audit your own practice to maybe avoid the story and the headache that we had during the chapters? So that's kind of how it all pulled through together.
I loved it. And basically you simplified it so that it can work for a new boss.
Yeah.
The simple advice really works for a new boss. And kind of this flashes back to, I play hockey with two gals that are psychiatrists and a couple more that are therapists. And I have sat in a lot of boardrooms, and I can tell you for nothing that I'm aware that DSM-5 says half of the planet has anxiety, and I think we are being lowballed there. It's at least 2/3 of everybody I know. And with writing of autism and ADHD are both in leadership, and that's not negative. The autism spectrum gives out the energy and drive to delve deeply. I'm convinced that over half of the PhDs would measure on the spectrum somewhere because it's in there and you don't mention it, which is perfectly fine and good. But leaders have a ton of self-help books. And this kind of thing is important for them to say the human element. It's not just the how do you portion your day, and frankly, when they get what the highly successful people do, I'm like, that really helps ADHD people to have an external, this is a schedule which helps you succeed. And this is more on the why people do shit.
Yeah.
And what people do shit. And I thought that was really useful because I have worked directly for a couple people firmly on the autistic spectrum. And I had a boss once say to me, hey, you should discourage the people underneath you from speculating about things. And I'm like, I cannot discourage the people that work for me from being human because that's human.
Yeah.
I can at best redirect them and say,
Yeah.
hey, we're working here. Let's work on this for here and now. That is for later over drinks.
Right. Well, and I think that's the human part of human resources. And yes, it's policies and SOPs and handbooks and all the things. Yes, we get that. But each one of these stories really is that human component that you can't plan for. And I think what's interesting is some of these stories, if you were just reading it like in a textbook or a class, you're like, of course I would never do those things as a leader. Leaders don't do those things. But this is reality. We
Yeah.
do those things. And then what are the consequences of those things? Like, how do we then clean it up? So it's just, yeah, human nature. You can't predict it. I mean, you can teach it all you want, but until you're in the moment, where it goes and what branch it's going to take, there's a lot of little decisions along the way that will affect the direction of the issue or the relationship.
It made me think of, I watched The Residents before I read your book and that talks about the death of the chief usher in the White House. And because a lot of your stories came from, I could see it was the hotel trade. So a many to one in terms of employee ratio and differently structured, ideas. And so I kept thinking, it's like, wow, this is a book that would have helped that lead guy dealing with all of those employees acting badly all the way through that miniseries. And it was just another example. Like, that was a really well-written miniseries because here is all of the HR problems. Hey, there's the employee getting drunk. Here's the employee
Right.
sleeping. Here's the employee.
All of it. And yeah. Well, I think what's interesting too is we really wrote each chapter as like a little nugget, because sometimes it can get, I don't know, not from a textbook comparison, but sometimes I read a lot of these books and leadership books and business books. Sometimes they're very lengthy. And I think, new leaders, sometimes they just want a nugget. They just want a little nugget, a little thing. And I think these are bite size.
Yeah.
You can read it, process it, and you could just read any chapter in any order. You can just read one, you can read two and ignore the other eight. Like, there's just in bite-sized knowledge that then you can think about your own practice. So, self-help, not like, oh, I just read 50 things I have to do differently. No, each chapter has 3 or 4 things to think about. And I think that's just a little bit more manageable because you're still doing your day-to-day work. You're still doing all the schedules and the problems and the business and, everything else you're doing. You don't have time to change 50 things, but you might have time to change 3.
I had an interesting question, though, and there was one I was wondering if you were going to go deeper and darker in volume 2 to say, how do you deal with upper management and HR handling senior people problems?
That is interesting, managing up, right?
Yeah.
And, there's, okay, here we go. A couple things. One, I will say,
I could tell your tone of voice changed in there, so you're with me.
Well, there's a lot. Trickle down, for the most part, does not work. I don't believe in trickle down economics, right?
Nope.
But trickle down leadership culture and leadership behavior, that does trickle down. If the top person, and whether that's a division or a whole company, if that top person acts callous or acts unethical or is just a world-class, asshole to employees, that will trickle down. Other leaders will see that and be like, oh, that's how we are here. That will trickle down and create a very toxic work environment. And, people can say it doesn't matter. I think it does. I do not know how business goals can be met with that toxic kind of work environment.
Oh, agreed.
Right?
It's everywhere. It's something you have in the leadership, you have in police. I was in Colorado and I worked in an office where, hey, the chief of police stepped down and a new chief of police stepped up. And suddenly the complaints about police harassment like quadrupled.
Yeah. And so that is going to trickle down. So as, in my role as an HR leader, as any kind of a senior leader, what do you do to change up? Like, how do you manage up? How do you fix that? Because you can try as hard as you want. You can work on it all day, every day. But if that top person or that top, board or whatever that is, they aren't going to change, you're not going to be able to change it. So because I coach future HR leaders, I teach a course and I teach the capstone course. And part of that is really that ethics component. You got to make sure the company you're working with, it matches your own ethical your ethical, guidelines. And if you're not going to be able to change it, you either have to leave or you have to, well, really, you have to leave or you have to be part of it. There's really no other option. So how do you manage this? So this is like influence without authority over the person. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so
Absolutely.
what I find is you've got to talk their language. You can't just say, well, we can't do this because this is the right thing to do, right? They're not interested in that. So I try to teach anyone I'm talking with or coaching that is having that kind of a problem is how do we put it in numerical sense? So if we do the keep this practice, our turnover is going to be, X. And you can do an analysis and you can cost out whatever that company is, whatever your industry is, you can cost out what every turnover costs you. So if you have 40% turnover,
it's $10,000 to $30,000,
yeah.
isn't it?
Well, it just depends. Like hourly type roles are more like, $1,200. You go up to entry level supervisory. It's like 3,200. You get up to a C-suite and it can be up in those ranges. So it really depends on the job, what they do, how much they do it, and if they're salary exempt or entry level and what the skill set. So you can cost out those jobs and you can put data and metrics to your argument saying, if we put this, I don't know, just, employee relations activity in place, or if we put this better performance management system in place, or if we put this training program. So something that is very like employee focused, employee driven, something that's going to help them. We're going to reduce turnover by X number of percent. That will save us. And you can put a dollar to it. So how can you turn your argument into dollars? Because that's what those individuals will care about. So that would be one thing I would say.
Well, and that's what I liked about this book. And I'm hoping that you can figure out the gentle way to say it up is like your behavior. I asked for a interview on my way out the door once from, I'll be honest, it was Microsoft. And I said, you need to know that your turnover is this high. You've complained about it, you bitch about it. And it is because of the way you run meetings and you bully people and you belittle them and they hide problems from you because of this. You could probably solve some of these problems with your little finger if you were approachable, but because you're so negative, they hide it, they try to fix it, it gets worse. So by the time it hits you, it's a firestorm. And they're not allowed to. And he had no idea that he was coming across as a bully, but he had been, staff sergeant in the military, and he'd been used to taught a certain way, and this is how you lead, and didn't understand that all of these people underneath him were delicate flowers that he was crushing through.
Well, and it's interesting, you did it at your exit interview. And that's too late for companies.
Oh, yeah. I was 2 months in before I knew, this is not the right place for me. And I was working with a company. I'm like, you're going to have to replace me. And I'm going to do what good I can before I get out of here because this is not my place.
Well, some companies, I would say, I would challenge them. If they're not doing exit interviews, you are missing valuable data. So do them because, it's too late. They're on their way out, but at least you're going to capture what's happening. But I challenge companies to do more. I like what I call, it's called a stay interview. It's kind of like an exit interview, but you're just having good conversation while people are still employed. What's working well? What will keep you here? Hey, if you're going to stay here a long time, are there any things we could change? Are there any things we could change or tweak to make you want to stay here even longer?
Yeah. I had a CEO that I did an exit interview with them that way. And he was like, we want to keep you. You're valuable. I'm like, you do not have any meetings outside. You only meet with your executive staff. So you only hear what they tell you.
And that can be good or bad.
Skip like meetings, people. Exactly. So, I'm all in and invested emotionally in you doing volume 2, Managing Up.
Yeah, I think that what's interesting is with volume 2, we're actually going to have 10 authors. So with the first book, each of us wrote 2 chapters. So 2 chapters each. That got a little challenging, especially when we were in the end stages of trying to edit one story and then doing the next. And it was a little harder than I expected it to be. So for volume 2, it's going to be 10 stories, 10 chapters. So everyone can just focus on the one. And the 5 of us from book 1 are all coming back for volume 2. And then we have 5 new people. They've already committed to it. We've already have our first deadline of submitting your draft. And what I'm doing is the five of us are waiting to see the outlines of the five new people. And once we get those outlines, then we're going to choose stories that balance that. And I think that that is a good focus that I can give us is the harder things, managing the toxic boss, but he or she is the boss. So what do you do with that? I think we probably all have good stories with that. The challenge is sometimes, Jeannie, it's like, all right, this company is no longer a good fit for me. And you have to make different decisions, you know?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I feel like I want to send you stories, not because I want to be a part of it, just because I'm more in the security space. So I've been more dealing with the higher level people and for the things I've run in. And if you open this, there'd be so many people I know that have been in HR that have been fabulous that would say, oh yeah, boy, do we have stories.
I think the goal of this whole series is why can't we just write them forever until people don't want to write them anymore, right? So it was intentionally done as volume one because then there can be two, then there can be three, then there can be four. And I hope that we get all different kinds of stories. I want security spaces. You're right. Four of the five of us were all hotel people. So I think that did come through in the first book. And we're like, okay, we on hotel people. So, just having more variety and from different areas of the country as well. So we're open to listening to people. And I've already actually have one person recruited for volume 3 because 2 wasn't going to work for them. So yeah, so if you have people that have interesting stories, let's, connect them with me. I'd love to hear
I'll send them your way. This is it. In a lot of ways, you are putting together in fiction. These are just anthologies, but yours are more directed HR anthologies. And so I love the notion of saying, if this first theme was fabulous, how to manage in this area, and then how to manage up, and then how to manage out. There's a lot of, I bet there's people that could come bring you stories and say, and this is how you manage partners and contractors.
Right. Well, and for us too, part of like kind of the organicness of it, the only commitment that every author has is you have to be part of editing, not just your own work. Since we're doing self-editing, you have to be willing to read other people's chapters and help support each other with really good feedback. Like, hey, this part sounds a little wonky. Let's talk through it. How could how could that resonate a little bit more? How could that be more interesting or more clear? Right. So that's the only rule. There's no money that it costs anyone to be a part of this. And it's truly been fun. Even our marketing, we're doing it ourselves, which is actually kind of hilarious. One of the only fees we did, because none of us are graphic artists at all, so we did have to pay for somebody else to do our cover. We could not manage that ourselves. And pay for the copyright. That's all we had to pay for. The rest is
I think my sister owes me a couple covers. I could throw her your way.
Yeah, and that was funny. I don't know if I could do a side story on the cover. We had a vision, and we were kind of sketching it out, and then we tried AI, and we're like, wow, that was an epic failure. So we went and hired someone, but trying to get all of our brains, like what we could close our eyes and see in our mind, and get that to come out in a picture. That was actually probably one of the harder things to do in this book.
I worked with we did an Oz D&D book, and I have to say that I appreciated the way the mastermind of it all put together art boards. He's like, I'm imagining a character that like this, and he's like, pictures and these things, and like, and now I have a couple of friends that are graphic artists, so I'm like seeing the whole process, and that itself, you're absolutely right, is a fascinating idea and process and how you go through it. And I'm delighted to hear that AI just didn't work for you.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, what it did is it gave us a couple of examples to tell the artist, like, here's kind of how we're feeling with the noir look, but we don't want a black and white, like the sepia tones. And so it kind of gave us a way to visualize what we were thinking. But yeah, it was definitely not cutting it.
Yeah, excellent. And so you're going to do volume 2 and 3. Have you ever considered that you are clearly a woman full of stories? Have you ever considered writing nonfiction?
No, I have not. But when I retire, who knows what that will be? Who knows what that will look like? I don't know. Will I ever retire? Like, I can't imagine just not working at all. So doing things like book projects and sharing stories, I think that is phenomenally interesting. But what I will tell you, Jeannie, so back in 2019, I ran a year-long corporate program that I was, trying to get people excited about it. Basically, at its heart, it's an employee relations program, but it was called Do Good. And it was about just how to really engage in a different way, but grassroots efforts and just really organic and thoughtful things, not just, buying food or buying a pizza or buying a hat or something for your employees. So I did this year-long campaign with a small group of hotels that I was the corporate director of HR for. And so I did a year-long efforts on this. And I'm like, you know what? I really want to write a book about this. And I never got off the ground other than an outline and all that. So this has inspired me. I'm 3 chapters in on my own book now, because I knew I wanted to write that back then and just share what's in my brain and share it with others. And if there's nuggets that people can take. So I have started my own, and I hope that I could finish by mid 27 is my target goal for finish.
That's fantastic. And I'm absolutely certain you're going to get there, because you've figured out how to break down the work of writing and publishing already. And there's a lot of people out there listening. You're saying, well, I want to write a book, but I don't know where to go. And yeah, it is figurable. It is not magic and dark magic.
Well, we took some not easier routes. We did just only do Amazon publishing, because with that, it gives us a platform that you can easily link to. So we did go that route because we self-published it versus getting a publisher. So I get, that's different. It allowed us to accomplish our goal. And we do have both ebook and a printed book. So it allowed us to get our goal. But what it did is it took that scary mountain of a book, and I'm holding it in my hands. Like I'm thumbing the pages right now in front of me, right? And it's like, okay, that's real. I can do this too.
Awesome.
Anyway, it's pretty exciting. I think for that one, though, I might need to hire an actual editor.
I don't know. We know people. We'll talk. We will put links to the fascinating things we discussed during this episode on our website, which is www.writersdrinkingcoffee.com. Dari, thank you so much for talking with me today. This is fantastic.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun to talk with you and catch up and talk about our journey, because a lot of fun doing this. And I think that was kind of our other rule. Like, if you're not having fun doing it, you shouldn't be doing it. And all of us had fun all the way until launch day, right? So I think that's kind of the underlying thing. If it's not fun, don't do it. Pick a different activity. But if you're having fun and it excites you, keep doing.
Absolutely. And I think the whole point of writing it is somebody else is going to read it and feel less alone. And that's what writing is for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Listening to Writers Drinking Coffee, a labor of love and enthusiasm put together by the hosts. Our main web magic is cast by Deirdre Schween, and our sound engineer is Ksenia Chernievskia. Our intro and exit music is performed by Michael Langberg, who lives down under and runs Tin Can Music School. Our podcast sponsors are Arm Street in Kharkiv, Arwa Coffee and the Bean Scene, both in Sunnyvale, and a shout out to wherever you like to take your notebook or laptop and write. And hey, thanks for listening.